Hello everyone, welcome on in. It's the latest edition of Betting Weekly Dojo, where we guide you through the talking points of sports betting, educate you on some sort of betting advice over years of experience from myself, Nigel Seeley, and my co-host Neil Channing. Now, good morning, Neil. We're coming to you bright and early. It is about 7:30 this morning on Tuesday morning, and no, this isn't the Doc from Back to the Future. This is Neil Channing this morning after a bit of a night out. Where you been yesterday, Neil?
Oh gosh, yeah. I got invited to the Horse Race Writers and Photographers Awards lunch, and I think because there's lots of journalists there, they feel that they have to succumb to the cliche that journalists are all alcoholics and drink all the time. I don't know. There was one guy said to me that he'd left home at 9 o'clock, and I said, "Blimey, where did you have to come from?" And then he said something that was about 40 minutes away. And I said, "What happened there?" And he said, "Well, we all met up and we went to the pub." And I said, "Well, the pub couldn't have been open." And he said, "No, we got a pub that we knew to open early."
And it is a heavy session, that is. I've been there before. It's a bit of a heavy session. There's no betting on the event because I mean, what I find from that event is the same people win every year. The photographer of the year there's only two in the short win, and it's alternate each year. Whoever won it last year gets to this year. It's the same old people.
The photographer of the year, I think it was his 10th time of winning it.
It's unbelievable.
I think basically the other guy just needs him to die.
Well, there's only two people who do photography, and one of them wins it one. Yeah, and the same four every year. It's like
there was a lot of gamblers there, though. There were quite a lot of bookmakers and quite a lot of gamblers. I saw quite a lot of high-profile professional gamblers, and yeah, actually, a few people came up to me and said how much they were enjoying the dojo. I was pretty surprised how.
Well, they have been drinking since 9 o'clock in the morning. They've been heavily drinking. So hopefully that was early doors rather than late.
Yeah, it was good. I managed to skulk away about 8 p.m., which was considered to be, really getting an early night.
Yeah. Well, we're coming on to you nice and early today. A little bit delayed usually on the Monday to the Tuesday. Obviously, Neil was out yesterday, and today I'm out playing football at Wembley Stadium. So I've got a dream come true, an absolute dream come true. And I'm sure you'll be able to see pictures on that on my social pages as the day progresses. A couple of discussion points we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the decline of Manchester City. How do we evaluate favourites when they're on decline? Looking at big sports personalities and teams. When they're on decline, are they bettable prices or are they fades, depending on the search situation? And we're also going to talk about an article that's caught Neil's attention about sort of psyche of in-play betting. Before we do that, big week last Saturday. I texted you and said, job done, 10 on for the Chris McCalls and the Strictly. I think you've won that, Neil. He's down to minus 600, I think, generally. But I think that's in the bag, mate. I think you should start spending the Christmas money.
I didn't watch it until the day after, actually. When you texted me that, I was thinking, I mean, I really enjoyed his darts, but I thought it was going to be slightly more spectacular. A guy was talking to me about it at this lunch yesterday, and I said to him, I still think he's a bet now, actually. I actually bet him again yesterday morning. So it's mad. I just keep going in. I'm so involved in it. It's going to be an absolute bloodbath if it doesn't work out. Anyway, let's talk about something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big week for you, obviously, on that. But good to see you in chipper shape. I mean, last time I was a bit worried about you. You was a bit down the dumps. You said you had a bad run on the NFL. How's the AI handicapper? Has he been
he didn't
churning
send me,
out winners?
The guy never sent me over the selections this week. The week before, he sent over 3 and 2 of them won. I think that's too small a sample to know whether our computer boffin is any good or not. I had a winning week this week, but only quite small, and I did have a good day on the horses on Saturday, actually. So yeah, it's not been too bad. A bit better.
Well, we can tell the change of your demeanour, your personality is brighter. Neil Channing back in the winners' enclosure. That's what we want to see. One team that isn't in the winners' enclosure at the moment is Manchester City. The champions of England are in absolute turmoil. No wins in 6 now for Pep Guardiola, and that wasn't what he was doing on the sidelines. He was telling you how many titles he's won for Manchester City. And this week, we're seeing prices of Manchester City we've never seen before. Now, I don't know about you, Neil, but we've been in this game a long time, and I haven't seen a complete fold or a rebase on the side, a capitulation from a team in a very short period of time. I mean, this Manchester City the way they're falling apart is incredible to see. And from a betting perspective, it's even more spectacular. I tweeted a few days ago, 5 weeks ago, Man City would have considered the best team in the world. Now they're not even the best team in Manchester. And I include Salford in that as well. But let's have a look at the way they are at the moment. I mean, you're talking, they're playing Nottingham Forest, which we're recording this on Tuesday, they're playing Nottingham Forest on Wednesday. To put this into some perspective, 2 seasons ago, they were minus 1,200 to beat Nottingham Forest, so 1 to 12 on. Last season, they were minus 700 to beat Nottingham Forest, they're minus 700. And today, they're all approaching minus 250, so 2 to 5. So that is a huge, huge difference. They're the same players, they're the same personnel. There's not really much change, but obviously the form has completely gone. If we priced this match up 6 weeks ago, we would probably be at minus 600 Manchester City. What do we do in these kind of situations as bettors? How do you approach it when a team's... Because what we're getting here is we're getting the public who want to oppose Man City at all costs. They're saying, listen, we're going to bet Nottingham Forest on the Asian handicap +1 when it could have been +2.5 a couple of years ago. We're going to bet them all kinds. We're going to oppose Manchester City. And then you've got the big players who are looking at this value of Man City. You think, well, they are going to come good, but there seems to be something not right in this Manchester City side at the moment. Not only Man City, but obviously whenever this situation arises, how do you factor a sort of a complete spiral out of form or just a decline from individual sports stars and teams?
I think it depends, doesn't it? I mean, you have to put your finger on why it's happening before you can say that. Like sometimes you get teams towards the end of the season will use the expression they're on the beach already. Their season is effectively over. They're mid-table. They can't get relegated. They can't get promoted, and they stop trying. And now, if you have a sort of ratings-based system for coming up with your prices and selections, it's very hard to stick with your original rating because, motivation is a huge factor in sport. So that's easily understandable. And then you can have a situation where a team loses players, they got key players out, and they need to be re-rated accordingly because a team that's got 2 particular star players and maybe the rest are not so great, if those guys are out, they're a completely different kettle of fish. Then you've got managerial changes. Sometimes, you were saying it's unprecedented to think of a team falling from grace, but I was trying to think, well, is it unprecedented? I mean, Man United, when Alex Ferguson retired, they kind of went from being sort of legendary, and it was hard to see them not being a successful dynasty, and then suddenly they kind of lost their kind of cloak of invincibility, and people started to go there and think they could win.
My factor really was more in such a short period of time.
No, definitely.
I mean, Manchester City or Manchester United.
The United thing took a long time.
Leicester as well. I mean, Leicester won the Premier League title, then they went down. I could see that over a season, and that was obvious that was going to. What we're seeing here has come so quickly, and there's been such a huge rebasing in such a short period of time.
I think you're right. That's obviously. I can't. I know whether it is unprecedented, but I can't think of a recent example as stark as that. But I think, with all those situations, an injury or a change of manager or a lack of motivation, you can justify, you can say to yourself, well, okay, well, we do need to re-rate this team. We do need to mark them right down and change all their future prices going on for the next, 6, 10, whatever games. For Man City, it's really hard to put your finger on exactly what's happened. I mean, essentially, it's the same players. And obviously, the management's the same. The motivation to try and win stuff hasn't changed in the last 6 weeks. And they've just fallen apart. I mean, I don't know what reason can you put it down to?
My only reason I think they know that they're done on these points deductions. That I think they realise they're going to get some big points deductions. I've heard rumours that they are going to get a significant points deduction at the start of the season, and I think the players want out.
But wouldn't you think that if that was the case, that you'd be thinking, well, we better make sure we have a last brilliant year before the wheels come off, especially even if you're thinking of leaving, as a shop window, you want to play your absolute best so you can get a new contract somewhere else. I,
or,
don't- I,
or,
do you feel
or
like they're not really putting it in?
well, they
Uh,
can't buy any players. This is the other thing. Man City in January could go out and buy players. Current Man City side can't buy players because no agent will put them there because they don't know what circumstance they're going to be in. So it's very hard for them to recruit. The other thing is obviously I believe that they've clearly had a falling out with the manager because the manager's come into the press conference the other day. Pep Guardiola, he looked like he'd been. I think he'd been in 5 rounds with. Well, he wouldn't look like that if he went 5 rounds with the current Mike Tyson. But Mike Tyson at his prime, he looked awful. So there's clearly something gone on in the dressing room.
Well,
there,
that is another reason why you can sort of re-rate teams, isn't it? The sort of lost the dressing room kind of thing could mean that teams are just not motivated. I mean, my initial reaction when you say, how should you respond to that as a pro bettor is, I'm always imagining that there'll be regression to the mean, that things will just kind of return to an average level. And I'm always wary about our old friend recency bias. I don't want to overreact to recent events. And I want to think that, over a period of time, things will normalise. So when you say to me this weekend, against Nottingham Forest, they were minus 1,200, minus 700. Now they're minus 250 3 years later. My initial reaction is to say, well, if I was having a bet, I could only bet them at minus 250. I mean, I won't get involved because I think it's really hard to quantify and it's quite tricky. But I definitely would rather be with Man City than Nottingham Forest in that match. But whether that means I'm happy to row in with them every week, I don't know. I mean, it's six games is not a huge sample size, but I was definitely thinking after 2 games it could easily be a blip, and now it does start to look like something's happening, and there's definite reasons to re-rate it. I think in all professional gambling, as a general rule, though, you just don't want to overreact to stuff. And you can sit out. You don't have to have an opinion. You can sit out if you're not really sure. And in this one, I'm not really sure. I think I need to see a bit more evidence. But I think if you pinned me down and said you have to have a bet this weekend, I'd probably back them.
Yeah, minus two, but they're actually minus 250 now currently to play Nottingham Forest on Wednesday. On Saturday, they're away at Crystal Palace and they're minus 136. They're 8-11 to win at Crystal Palace. Now that again, last season would be minus 350. You're getting tremendous value on Man City if you think what Neil said there they'll regress. I'm so unsure because I've never seen something like this in such a period of time. If it was over a season a steady decline, then I would have more of an opinion. But I've never.
But I think it would be hard to just. I don't think you could sit in a video on because we win and say, relatively weak teams like Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace, and sit there and make a video saying we should be on Notts Forest this week. No. To win the game at these kind of prices because Man City have, completely fallen apart. It's not like nobody knows that Man City have fallen apart. The market has made a huge adjustment for that fact, massive adjustment. And, if you do say, well, I'm backing Forest or I'm backing Crystal Palace, you're taking a pretty short price, really.
And if they do win, everyone says, oh, well, you're opposing Man City at the. No, that's no real surprise. And if Man City do get back to winning ways, you look silly.
But another quick thing is like over the years, I think a lot of times, if I was talking when we were talking in the episode, we talked about books and education. I talked about a book by a guy called Alan Potts, who's a horse racing guy, and it was called Against the Crowd. And his main thesis is that to win in gambling, you need to look at the way that everyone else is thinking and try and think outside the box. I think it is a bit hard to say to people, well, I think Man City are a brilliant bet at 2-5. A lot of people would say, well, you're an idiot. They just lost 6 on the spin. You can't take 2-5. That's a long odds on price. But in the context of what would they have gone off last season, and they are essentially the same players as they were 6 weeks ago, I'm leaning more towards a bet. I think the other thing that we both know is that over the years, those bets that are a little bit painful to make that you kind of would feel slightly embarrassed to admit if they lost. They're often really good bets, I think. Whereas the bets where you're just kind of going with the crowd, by definition, they must be bad bets because the market must appreciate that.
Well, then one thing you said in this brief conversation, which I think we got to highlight, is that you said that there's a rebase. You have to have a rebase, and that's very important. When you rebase sides, you re-rate sides. If you have computer models, you rebase the side. The computer algorithm runs out the price, the probability of the price to run through it. Looking at the future markets, and we've said this many, many times in related bets, derivative markets, when you look at touchdown teams and rushing yards and first touchdown, they never move the market. Manchester City are still the favourites to win the FA Cup, which surprises me on what we're seeing so far. If the decline is there, perhaps the value is to pose them in the FA Cup market. The FA Cup draw was just made yesterday. They've got a very favourable draw. They've got a third round tie at home to Salford. But on my current ratings, Chelsea are level with Manchester City, and Chelsea are available 8-1, and they've been given a very favourable draw at home as well to Morecambe. So
that's a good shout. I like that. You love that, don't you? I know you do that every year because I think you're exactly right. I think bookmakers plaster up future prices on the FA Cup. They leave them up there and they don't really spend much time adjusting them on short-term stuff. So I know you often do that at this stage of the year. You try and find, I think your normal MO is to find 3 Premier teams who have strung a bit of form together recently, who are in the sort of 50-1 and up range. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, have favourable third round. I've never won on it, Andy. I've got to semi-finals, and I've done well. I took Wolves at 80-1 a couple of years ago. I think they got to semi-final. And Southampton, I think, at big prices. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I always look to oppose Manchester City, but they've won it so many times with their short favourites. They're plus 330 to win the FA Cup. On the current form now, they're awful. The team that I think the teams that I think there is a big rebase on this season is, if you look at ratings, Liverpool have had a huge rebase on what they've done, and so have Chelsea. Liverpool are at home in the FA Cup to Accrington. They're the favourites to win the Champions League ahead of Manchester City now. They're runaway. They're 11 points better than Manchester City in the Premier League title, and Liverpool are 5-1, 7-1 to win the FA Cup with one bookmaker. And Manchester City are plus 330. Are Liverpool at double the price of Man City at this current time? So no, the market of Man City is wrong there. And if you look at Chelsea again are the most improving team in the country as well. They're 8-1 to win the FA Cup, and they have a very favourable third round.
And sometimes when you see these prices where you think, well, I can't really understand where they've come up with that. On that FA Cup thing, it's often as simple as just they're a bit sleepy. No one's really looking at it. On exchanges, there isn't much matched on the futures for the FA Cup. The odds compilers at the bookmakers, it's just not really a daily priority to check the FA Cup outright and see if you need to update it. It's definitely a little edge you can have. Yep. Obviously, it's hard to have the winner of the FA Cup, so you could have this little edge for years and years and still not win anything. But you're definitely having a good bet there. I like that, Liverpool to win the FA Cup. That's a good bet.
Liverpool 7-1, 8-1. You got for Chelsea. Both got great FA Cup records. Man City are fade at 23% of the market on Manchester City. There should be a 5-1 at least. And the other team and you also got to remember that Arsenal draw Manchester United, so one of them are going to go out as well. So that's your bet. Liverpool and Chelsea to win the FA Cup. You can thank me in May. And I might even do a double this week, on Chris McCausland to win Strictly Come Dancing and Man City at minus 50 to win.
Amazingly, we do slightly plan what we're going to talk about on these dojos. And I've suddenly thought of something that I meant to say to you that you didn't know I was going to say today. But it was because you said they take out 23% of the book, and it reminded me. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking randomly about, I don't know how come we got onto it, draws in test match cricket. And I said that, the game had changed, the style of the game had changed, and that you never really got a draw. But for years and years and years, the market didn't really adapt to it, and the draw was still often, in the kind of plus 150 to plus 300 region. Draws tend to trade a bit higher these days, and they can often be plus 350 to plus 500. I don't know whether you would like to have a guess at how many test matches there have been this year. I suddenly saw this on my timeline this week.
I saw the tweet actually, but I can't.
Mm.
My memory nowadays is awful. So I remember looking at it and I was absolutely staggered. I don't know how many tests there were, but I can recall there was probably one. Was there one draw? Was that right?
Yeah, so there's been 43, at the time the guy tweeted, there'd been 43 international cricket matches, what we call test matches. And there had only been one draw, and that was a match where it literally just rained 5 days and never actually even started the game. It counted as a draw because I don't even know. From a betting point of view, I don't know whether you'd have even lost there. You probably would have just got your money back. So 43 out of 43 fading the draw. And I'm not saying the average price was plus 350, 22% of the market, but it wouldn't have been far out. Anyway, I think since I noticed that tweet, there's been 3 more test matches, and I think one of them, the draw was like plus 800 or something like that. But the other 2, it was about plus 350, and none of those 3 were draws either. So that's 46 test matches with one washed out, rained out. That is an amazing thing where the market just allows you to play on something where 23% should clearly be closer to 5% or something like that, and the rebase just hasn't kicked in a massive market.
The minute I do it, it's going to go that and the minute I get involved, it'll be back to back.
Maybe we should just do that next year. It's just like every match we just lay a small amount, fade the draw to win a few $100 or something, and at the end of the year we should have enough to buy a car.
Depends what make and model, but I mean, I know we just go back to reverting to the norm, isn't it? I mean, that has to come to a stage where the price there has to be draws. I mean, but the price is going to get you could get draws in test matches that could be going off at 10-1, and then you could be thinking, well, I know statistically I'm doing the right thing on what you've said, but there'd be something in you thinking, why am I? My brain would be thinking, why am I laying the draw at 10-1 or something?
Well, now I mean, probably on average the draws maybe 4-1 or 4.5-1. So maybe I don't know. I couldn't find. I tried to find on the internet the average price of those 43 draws, and I could. It wasn't very easy to find. But I did see quite a lot of them, and quite a lot of them are under 3-1. So obviously the market has rebased slightly because draws. You often used to see draws at 6-4, but it hasn't rebased enough. I tend to think, generally speaking, in terms of rebasing, and it goes on to Man City, that people they over rebase and they do it too quickly. But in this instance with Test match cricket, it's not quickly. This situation has been changing for 6 years, and they still haven't really caught up. There's been a glacial move of the market. I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, amazing. Well, the market's governed by Indian bettors, and probably the Indian bettors still bet the draw, I suppose. That's one of the possibly the reasons why. Just one thing I want to just clear up there. There's a lot of America. Obviously, we're sponsored by Bet Rivers, your hometown sportsbook across in America. And when we use the terminology lay over here, obviously laying in the UK means we're opposing the bet. So we want to be the bookmaker and take that bet on. Obviously, in the American market, when you say you lay the favourite or you lay the thing, it means you're betting the market. So when me and Neil was just referred
it's annoying, isn't it?
When we just said we're laying the draw, doesn't mean we're betting the draw. It
we're
means
fading.
We're fading the draw.
Yeah,
we're fading the draw there. Just one thing before we leave this, I just want to tell you just a quick story reminding me a little bit of Rebase. Do you remember when we worked at IG Index and the senior trader at the time, who was a soccer trader, I won't mention his name. That he never changed Ipswich on the ratings. Do you remember that? Ipswich were like favourites to finish bottom of the Premier League, it was the Premier League. They were like, and they had an unbelievable season, and they had a striker called Marcus Stewart, who was a top goal scorer, and they got into European football. They're managed by George Burley, had a really good season, and after 6 or 7 games, you realise they were a lot better than the rating. And he never, ever changed it. Because we had a different scoring system, it was a huge arbitrage between other rival bookmakers, but he never changed it because he never revalued them. And they were like 33-1 to win the title at some stage, and we were like 1-3 on a 100 index or something like that. And we had a massive position on him, but he never changed them. I think they ended up finishing 3rd, and then all of a sudden he rebased them, and they went literally overnight from 1-3 with the winner getting 100 points and the second getting 60 and so on and so forth. And you had to like 9.12. It was a huge, huge
I think,
rebase.
but that is a key thing, though, isn't it? With the rebase, you have to do it gently. You can't make sudden snap changes. And I kind of agree with him that, generally speaking, you want to not be too quick to rebase things. But if you just do it gently, then you have to slightly rebase. It is funny. I find it interesting, all that stuff.
Yeah, that is the rebase. That's to Manchester City. We'll see what develops over the next couple of months, but there is definitely a huge decline, something going on at the Etihad that we're not really 100% sure, and it's really playing havoc on the betting markets. Nobody really knows how to play them, and when they're the favourites to win the Champions League or the favourites to win the Premier League, or not now anymore, but favourites to win the cup competitions, there is value to be had. So if you're in the camp that Man City are gone, look at those FA Cup markets, because nobody's looking at them now, and Chelsea and Liverpool are definitely the value in that market. Okay, let's move on to a subject that you caught your eye, Neil. You was browsing through the internet, looking at various gambling columns and various gambling magazines, and you come across a sort of a scientific approach that American bettors have been looking at, and Harvard University, or big university guys, have been looking at.
It was Berkeley.
Berkeley
School of Business, a very prestigious Californian university. And they published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics a paper, and basically they said sports betting and financial data show how people misinterpret new information in very predictable ways. And they started off by giving an example. I'll quickly read you a little bit. I won't read the whole thing. Let's say it's a home game for the Golden State Warriors, and Steph Curry shows he's still got it, sinking back-to-back three-pointers minutes into the first quarter. The fans at Chase Center take notice, and so do the betting markets, where the odds move towards the Warriors. Yet it's a long game. The away team comes back, and with just 10 seconds to go, the Warriors are down by 2 and have just missed a shot. A victory is now unlikely, and the betting odds should have shifted to reflect that near certainty, but they don't. If you look at the history of NBA games, the probability that a team with the ball up 2 with 10 seconds left wins over 90% of the time, said a professor at Berkeley. And what they have found is that the betting markets treat baskets as quite similar during the course of a game. They slightly overreact to unimportant information, i.e. early baskets, and they underreact to late information when baskets come with just minutes or seconds left, when the winning post is very close and it can't really change. The match result can't really change too much. And they then went on to try and quantify people's decision making, and they actually mentioned Betfair markets, and they'd done a lot of work looking through markets on exchanges. They analysed 5 million betting transactions across 260,000 basketball, soccer, football, and ice hockey games to try and work out the correct probability of a win. They looked at financial markets as well. I just thought it was quite interesting. First of all, I think it's quite interesting that, a major university business school, I love the fact that they're all sitting there looking at betting results in obscure tennis matches and basketball games and whatever. But I also think that kind of seemed obvious to me, that people overreact to stuff early in the game and maybe are less realising the importance of stuff later in the game. And I wondered what you thought about that from your experience in running betting.
I mean, the first thing is that I think now we're driven by data. The fact that we have XG, shots on target, people are just fascinated by shots on target. So if in the first 10 minutes someone has all the possession and they have 2 clear-cut chances, the line moves hugely. Well, I'm always swimming against the tide. I always want to be betting against a team after 10 minutes. If a team was plus 150 and they're out to plus 180, just because one side has dominated the first 10 minutes, I want to be with that team plus 180. There's no doubt about it. There was a match the other day I was watching him play where a team had something like 0.04 XG. The other team had 1.2. I think it was a Spanish match. The team had 1.2. It was 0-0 after 60 minutes. The whole market had rebased and gone for the time at 1-2. The team had 0.4, 0.3 XG, had 2 late shots and won 2-0. So I think we bet on I think people we bet on what in running. You bet on what you think's going to happen, not what has happened. Whatever's happened has happened, and if a team hasn't converted their chances while they're dominating, I think it enhances the chances of the other team rather than the side dominating. So I think it's an interesting one. And it used to be, I'll tell you a brilliant story there. When I traded the Eurovision Song Contest.
Of course
in
you
play.
did.
Yeah,
of course you did.
I loved all that. But I traded the Eurovision Song Contest. And one thing that if a song was singing, whoever it was, someone wanted to bet that song.
Yeah.
So if number 4 come on, it was a good catchy song. Every call would be someone betting number 4, and you just go 10-1, yeah, 10-1. But when they'd seen all those different songs, that song was 100-1. The shrewd money come in after they've seen every single song. You wanted to be on the songs in the last 10, but there's everyone wants to be on something. They see reaction. Oh, a guy has all the possession of the football match. We want to be on that side. They missed a gilt edge chance. Want to be on that side. We like that song. We want to be on that side. Nobody really waits for the market to evolve. And I think that would be a lot of the times where I would probably do a lot more of my stuff at half time.
I totally agree with you. I, as you might remember, I got quite involved in the Olympics. And although the market sizes are quite small on a lot of the more obscure events, I still found it just fun to be involved in them. And sometimes I do bet for fun. I mean, I'm trying to win, but I'm doing it for fun, essentially. So there was a canoe slalom thing where I found that there were some woman in the canoe slalom had, she'd done like I don't know what it was, like the 5th best time of all time or something. She'd done something really good, even though she'd been like sort of 50-1 at the start. She was an outsider. She was only kind of number 12 in the world or something. And they said, "Oh, that is an absolutely amazing run. That might be hard to match that today. That's definitely put her in contention for a medal." And really, she was something like 2-1, plus 200 to win the gold medal. And there were lots of people still to come down the course, and they were very slow to realize. Everybody had assumed that the last 3 people, the 3 favourites to win the gold medal, would get past this time because they're better. But it was such a good benchmark, the time, and it was interesting how the market. It took ages for her to go to odds on, and then eventually I think she went to -300, and then the New Zealand woman beat her in the last run and killed it. But I just found it quite interesting that people wanted to be with the potential of the unraced against what was in the can already of the raced. And in those situations, I always want in horse racing, I like the form in the book against the unraced potential superstar, because I think the market always overreacts to the unraced potential superstar. And there was another one, exactly like you said with the Eurovision. I was watching the BMX, and they were doing kind of tricks or whatever, and I think they get 2 shots at doing the course, and exactly that happened. Every time somebody came on and did their piece, their price would shorten up, and then the next person would come and they would be better, and that person's price would go out. So you could make money just by immediately fading the person who was on the course, because of people's inherent bias to go with what they can just see. I just thought that paper was quite interesting. I totally agree with you on the soccer. My opinion on soccer is that we know what the price is at the start, and we know what the price should be at 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes because of time decay. As the time runs out and it's still 0-0 or nothing, or 1-1 or whatever, and nothing is happening, then we know how the prices change. They change in a very predictable and solid way. They just tick down slightly and whatever. Anytime the market is swinging violently away from that, just because one team's got a lot of the possession, I instinctively and inherently want to be against them, and that's because I believe that is stuff that's happened in the past, and we're betting on what's happening in the future. Exactly what you said. I totally agree, and I've always believed that. And I was just interested in this paper because, I that's always been a theory and a feeling that I've had, but I didn't really have any particular maths to back that up. And I kind of felt like this paper reinforced my opinion a little bit, made me a bit more
But
confident.
also the other thing about it as well is that if there is a home side who's maybe a slight underdog or in a 50-50 match in a soccer match, and they started off really well, you would expect that from the home side, given that they're at home, given that the crowd are behind them and pumped. And the old cliche is from the away team is to keep it 0-0 and keep the crowd quiet for 20 minutes and then show your quality. So that goes against that trend as well. The other thing as well is that public perception, betting perception, the amount of times we do in play, the most popular time for in-play betting and for in-play bettors is when the favourite goes 1-0 down. If you've got a team like Manchester City in their prime, we've referred to Manchester City, or Liverpool in their prime, and they go 1-0 down, then every bettor in the world wants to be with them at an enhanced price, and usually their price in play at that stage is no value whatsoever.
Yeah, the value. If you simply assume that nothing's changed in the ratings, well, I mean, clearly something has changed because the dog has a motivation to sit and defend their lead and not press forward to try and score more in that situation. But I think you're definitely right because of recency bias and because lots of recreationals in the market think, oh my God, now I can bet. I wasn't going to bet them at minus 300 prior to the game, but now they're 1-0 down and I can get minus 120 or something. I'm suddenly getting a really good price, but I mean, obviously they're 1-0 down. It's a different situation. In that spot, I would tend to always, possibly because of my history of being a bookmaker in the past, I would tend to always think, oh, I want to be with the guys that have got the goal on the board, especially if it's like 20 minutes to go. Now, I mean, that other thing about that paper was, I do think a lot of the best bets you can have in soccer are betting that the status quo pertains with maybe 10 minutes to go. A match is 0-0, there's 10 minutes to go, and you can bet the draw at minus 250, or maybe even with 5 minutes to go sometimes. And I just think, like, if you did that over a long period of time, that's often I think that's a winning play.
That was my go-to play for years and years and years in play with 25 minutes to go, match 1-1, both teams sort of settling down a bit. You'd always get the price around about evens, just maybe
it
a little bit more.
It used to be like 68 minutes was the point where the price went from evens to short odds.
And now, though, at that
obviously
stage, you still get the extra time. These matches are going off to 100 minutes, and they destroy me. It was the go-to bet for years and years and years. It's the other thing in play when people don't factor in when you bet those underdogs is the draw actually is a huge runner. So whenever a favourite does go 1-0 down and you want to get with them, you're getting much better value by playing on the Asian handicaps where the draws a push.
Yeah.
Or the actual money line markets don't really offer much value because you've got that draw factor, which obviously increases, but the price is, the shrewd play at 1-0 down will probably be to bet the draw. And if they do equalise, trade out the draw and guarantee yourself some kind of profit because you're essentially betting that the favourite gets the second goal, really is what you're doing. So, there's so many different things in there. But, I mean, in-play betting and the terms and the talking about it as well, there's very interesting to the psyche of people. But it is definitely right. People react to what they see, they bet to what they see, and they don't pay any consideration on what.
I mean, it's basically the two things that we've banged on about, every week on the dojo at different times. It's recency bias, and it's people taking too small a sample, rebasing off a very small sample. And, we're, again, going back to Man City, we're in a stage now where the sample is starting to be not quite so small. If you were asking me these questions after 2 matches, I would have said just completely ignore it. They've just had 2 bad matches, but 6 matches, well, it starts to get a bit more of a factor now.
Yeah, obviously with tennis as well, tennis in play as well. It's the favourites. Everyone wants to be the favourite when they lose the first set, but the favourites have, especially not in non-majors. You that's a great bet to have when the favourite. Non-majors is a bad bet to have when the favourite loses the first set. He probably loses the match because the motivation. But in majors, the amount of comebacks are just right now. Over 5 sets, the quality.
And that you said the word. It's motivation, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, and the quality
because there
over
are so
5
many
sets.
tournaments. You have to protect your body and not get injured. There are some tournaments that are more important than others. And if you go 1-0 down in a not very important tournament, and you don't want to have a tough 3-setter and then ruin your chances of winning next week.
Just one thing to finally to back up your argument as well. There as well, in best of 5 set matches, if player A wins the first 2 sets and player B wins the next 2 sets, the whole market wants to be with player B because they believe he's got the most.
Player A should be favourite.
Player A has a much higher percentage rate of winning a 5-set match than player B, and the whole market's for.
And actually, there's a very good reason for that, because in the 4th set, the guy who's coming from behind has jeopardy. He can't afford to lose the 4th set. He has to try on every game in the 4th set, whereas the other guy can have a bit of a breather in the 4th set. If he goes a breakdown in the 4th set, player A, he can have a breather, and then he's going to be fresher in the 5th set, and I think that's the reason why that comes. But the market definitely doesn't realise that, because everybody loves to use that word, don't they? Momentum. He's got momentum, and actually, momentum is a thing that the betting market charges you for. There's a price to pay if you want to be on the momentum guy.
There is indeed the momentum guy. Hopefully, that teaches you a way of betting in play. If a team dominates those stats, don't necessarily think in the market moves, it may be worth opposing the market, swimming against the tide, something that I've done many, many occasions. Sometimes to my profit, sometimes to my loss as well. But I'll keep doing those things that I say on here. Neil, thank you very much for your time. You're going to get back to bed now, mate. You're going to get a nice... I've got you up nice and early.
Actually.
Well, I am on my way to Wembley to play football underneath the arch for the first time in my life. Can't wait, actually. Really looking forward to it.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a very cold day. I wish we chose a spring day to do it, but to go and play in freezing cold conditions in December.
Did you pay for this in a kind of drunken charity auction or something?
I did. It was actually given to me. It was I'm a member at Wembley. We're very lucky to have our own seats at Wembley, and I've had them for this is my second year. So you buy them in 3-year periods, and the first year period they give you a couple of, you can go and meet the England team, you and your son can go and meet when they're training, and because I took it again, the next level up of the VIP experience was to have a whole day at Wembley Stadium, play on the pitch, go to have a party, win the cup.
I'm just looking forward to next year when you're the mascot.
Next year I'm manager for the World Cup, the national side. And then you want to be spitting under 2.5 goals every game. And then in play, things will be very different.
Come on, boys. We're 10 men behind the ball now. I don't want to see any pressing forward. I bet the unders.
That's it. That's it for the Betting Dojo. Good luck with all your bets this week. Take care. Have a look at those FA Cup markets. I think there's a little bit of value there. The competition kicks off in the new year.
Don't forget to hit like and subscribe.
Just about to say that, Neil. What have you got to do?
They've got to join us every week. Do join us by pressing subscribe. That will remind you that an episode's coming up. And please press like if you like the video. I saw one guy last week said, "Finally, you've earned my like." That's tough, isn't it? What a tough audience. 12 weeks. 12 weeks we had to earn his like. Oh, dear. Well, hopefully he doesn't unlike us this week as well. Remember, there's a load of content coming your way. The Premier League is obviously in full flow over the Christmas period. Lots and lots of action on there and across Europe as well. We've got the hottest handicapper in the world in the ranks at the moment in James Easton. Neil, if you've been following his bets, you're about 50% are up on here. He's 22 units up already. So make sure you watch the European show. Betting Weekly extra time on there. Betting Weekly Premier League with me and Jack. We've got to catch up with those boys. We're a little trailing behind there. And at 11 o'clock Eastern time, every day, Monday to Friday, Betting Weekly Live, one of the handicapping team will be on, giving you their best bets on that particular day. Also, we have the newsletter out, which you can subscribe to on bettingweeklystudios.com. There is a 48 page guide
to the new tennis season, the Challenger season. We're going to do a Challengers, concentrate on Challengers a bit more next year as well. There's a guide to the Challenger season. A guide is coming your way on the ATP Tour and a guide on the WTA Tour as well, which is coming your way in the new year. And all you have to do is subscribe to that as well at bettingweeklystudios.com. But most importantly, subscribe to this channel and also give this a like and do join us. Neil, thank you very much for your time. I know it's nice and early and I appreciate you getting on. Have a good week. Good luck with your bets, as I said. And we'll speak to you all again next week. Take care.